I used to believe that nothing in the world could ever come between my sister and me, not oceans, not time, not distance, not even the quiet resentments that siblings sometimes keep tucked away like old photographs in forgotten drawers. We were born 2 years apart, raised in a cramped apartment above a laundromat in Portland, Oregon, and held together by the aching tenderness of a single mother who worked double shifts at a diner just to keep us fed. My name is Mara, and my sister's name is Elena, and this is the story of how she banned me from her wedding photos, and how I walked away, and how life punished both of us for it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't begin with anger. It begins with a memory. The night before everything fell apart, I was sitting in the small studio apartment I shared with my roommate, looking through an old cardboard box of childhood keepsakes. I'd been searching for something, maybe a grounding reminder that my sister and I once loved each other in a way that felt immovable. Inside the box was a faded snapshot of the two of us, both wearing mismatched Halloween costumes. I was 7, missing a front tooth, dressed like a pirate with a sagging cardboard sword. Elena was 9, a makeshift fairy with wings Mom had stapled from cardboard and glitter. In the photo, Elena's arm was wrapped around my shoulders, her smile big, bright, and proud as if she'd built me herself. I traced my thumb across that old photo, trying not to think about how things had changed. Elena had always been the golden one, the one who knew how to speak softly to make people listen, the one who grew into beauty like it was destiny, the one who followed rules, did chores without being asked, and earned a scholarship to the University of Washington. I was different, messier, louder, quieter on the inside. The kind of person who stumbled through life like every hallway had uneven floors. Still, we were sisters. Still, she was mine. That's what I kept telling myself as I looked at that photo the night before she called me. The call came at 10:42 p.m., sharp as a needle and twice as painful. I remember because I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed, and I spat toothpaste into the sink before answering. "Hey, Lena," I said, trying to sound calm despite the pit in my stomach. Wedding talk had become complicated. She hesitated, and I felt it through the phone like a tremor. "Mara, can we talk?" Her voice was too measured, too carefully unsteady. "Sure," I said and sat down on the edge of my bed. "What's up?" She took a breath. "I need to ask you not to be in the wedding photos." For a moment, I didn't understand the words. Not their meaning, but their direction. Like she'd aimed at someone behind me and accidentally hit me instead. "What?" "It's not personal," she rushed in to say. "It's just Daniel's family is very traditional. They want the photos to be clean, organized, formal." "Clean?" I repeated. "Am I dirty?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" Elena exhaled sharply, the way she used to when I didn't understand her math homework explanations at age 10. "You have a way of drawing attention, you know that. And with your hair, and your tattoos, and the whole artistic thing." "You mean the whole me thing?" I said. "Mara, please, don't make this harder." I pressed my palm to my forehead. My chest hurt in a way I didn't know how to name. "So your fiancé's family wants me hidden?" "No one said hidden," she insisted. "Just maybe not front and center. Maybe you can just attend quietly. You'll still be there. You're still my sister. Still her sister. Just not enough of one to be in a photo that would hang in her living room for decades." "Elena," I whispered. "Do you hear what you're saying? It's for peace," she said. "Everyone's stressed. And you know how your emotions can run high. I just don't want anything dramatic to happen." I let out a laugh, small, breathless, and unbelieving. "You think I would make a scene? I'm not blaming you." "But you are," I said. "You just won't say the words." Silence, the kind that feels like an answer. Finally she spoke, soft and final. "I love you. I just need you to respect this." The call ended before I could reply. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry at first either. I just sat in the glow of my lamp, holding that faded Halloween photo like it was a lifeline. When the tears finally came, they didn't stop for hours. I felt small. I felt replaceable. I felt erased from a moment that should have belonged to both of us. What hurt wasn't the wedding. It was the way she said, "You have a way of drawing attention." Like my existence was somehow a disruption. Like my difference was a flaw. The next morning, my roommate, Noah, found me curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, like a wounded animal. "You look like hell," he said gently, handing me a mug of coffee. I took it with shaky hands. Thanks. He sat across from me. You want to talk about what happened? I told him everything, every word, every pause, every silence Elena left for me to choke on. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. Mara, that's messed up. I swallowed hard. I know. He leaned forward. So what are you going to do? I don't know, I whispered. But I did know. A small voice inside me, the one I spent years ignoring, told me the truth. If she doesn't want you in her picture, she doesn't want you in her moment. And maybe she doesn't want you in her life as much as you thought. I hated that voice. I hated that it sounded right. 2 days before the wedding, I drove to Elena's house in Tacoma. By then, my heartbreak had simmered into a strange numbness, the kind you get after touching something too hot for too long. Her house was immaculately decorated with eucalyptus wreaths, half-packed gift bags, and neatly labeled boxes of wedding supplies, a stark contrast to my own chaotic apartment with chipped mugs and half-finished sketches taped to the walls. When she opened the door, her eyes widened slightly. Mara, I didn't know you were coming. I figured we should talk, I said. She stepped aside to let me in. Inside, everything smelled like lavender and expensive candles. Her life smelled like control. Mine smelled like paint and uncertainty. She closed the door. I don't want to fight. Then don't, I said quietly. She blinked, unsettled by my tone. I took a breath. I'm not going to your wedding. Her lips parted. What? Mara, no. We both know I don't belong there, I said. I don't fit Daniel's family. I don't fit your image of what you want your life to look like. That's not true. Then why can't I be in the photos? She flinched, just slightly. It's complicated, she whispered. No, I said. It's actually very simple. Her hands tightened at her sides. Mara, please, she said. You're my sister. Am I? I said it without anger, without heat, just exhaustion. Yes, she insisted. And I love you. I looked around at the perfectly organized boxes, the pristine counters, the framed engagement photos where her smile was flawless and controlled. You love the version of me that doesn't exist anymore, I said. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Mara, she tried, voice trembling. Don't leave. I stepped back. I have to. And I did. I left her standing in the doorway of her perfect house, blinking against the sting of tears she didn't let fall. I got in my car, closed the door, and for the first time in my life, I turned off my phone not because I didn't want to hear her call, but because I already knew she wouldn't. I spent the next 3 days driving. No destination, just highways and silence and gas station coffee. I slept in a cheap motel in Idaho, ate microwaved noodles, and watched snow fall outside the window like it was trying to bury me. And when the day of her wedding finally arrived, I wasn't there. Not in the photos, not in the church, not in her life. At least, not in the way I used to be. I didn't know then how short time really was. I didn't know loss was already coming for us like a quiet wave in the dark. I didn't know the price we would both pay for this distance. I only knew that I made the choice to walk away, and she let me. I didn't check my phone once on the day of the wedding. Not when I woke up in a cheap motel in Twin Falls. Not when I brushed my teeth using a bottle of water because the sink faucet sputtered brown. Not even when the clock hit 11 a.m., the exact time the ceremony was supposed to begin. Instead, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, scratchy sheets, buzzing fluorescent light, the low hum of traffic outside, and stared at the peeling wallpaper as if it might offer some kind of answer. I wondered if Elena noticed the empty seat I'd left unclaimed. I wondered if she thought about me at all. I wondered if she regretted it. I wondered if I did. Then, as if the universe grew tired of my spiraling, the fire alarm went off. A shrill, grating scream filled the hallway. I jumped up, grabbing my jacket and bag, and stumbled out into the cold morning air with the other guests. Most of them wore pajamas and annoyed expressions. I stood outside shivering, arms wrapped around myself, watching smoke curl from a trash can that someone must have set a cigarette in. False alarm, a man in uniform shouted. Everyone can head back in. People trickled inside. I didn't. Something about standing out there in the cold felt right, like punishment I deserved. Or maybe freedom I didn't know how to claim. The wind was sharp, biting at my cheeks, but at least it woke me up. By noon, I was on the road again, driving aimlessly through Idaho's open plains. The sky hung low and heavy, clouds thick like wet wool. It looked like rain, but the air stayed dry, unsettled, suspended, as if waiting for something to give. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with messages. Maybe from Elena. Maybe from Mom. Maybe from someone who cared enough to ask where the hell I was. But my phone stayed silent. The more hours passed, the more I felt the weight of that silence pressing on me from all sides. A quiet so deep it felt personal. Around 2 p.m., hunger forced me to stop at a roadside diner with a flickering neon sign that read, June's Place. Only the J and E were lit, so it looked like une plaque. It felt fitting. I sat at the counter and ordered a grilled cheese and black coffee. The waitress, a woman in her mid-50s with tired eyes, gave me a sympathetic smile. "You look like you're carrying something heavy," she said as she refilled my cup. I gave a weak laugh. "That obvious?" She shrugged. "I've worked here 30 years. I know the face of someone who ran away from something." I didn't answer, mostly because she wasn't wrong. She placed the sandwich in front of me, then leaned closer. "Whatever it is," she said gently, "pain still hurts even when you're right." I froze. Her words hit me square in the gut. I didn't know this woman. She didn't know me. But somehow she'd spoken the one truth I couldn't admit. I was right to leave. I was still hurting. I stayed at that diner longer than necessary, nursing multiple refills of coffee until the caffeine made my hands tremble. The waitress eventually slid a piece of lemon pie toward me without asking. "On the house," she said. "You look like you need something sweet." I thanked her quietly. A stranger being kind felt almost unbearable. When I finally stepped out of the diner, the wind had picked up, scattering dust across the empty parking lot. I got into my car, rested my forehead against the steering wheel, and exhaled shakily. I wanted to be angry. But mostly, I just felt untethered. Where was I supposed to go? What was I supposed to do? I started the car and drove toward the highway, letting instinct choose my direction. Around 4 p.m., a message finally appeared on my phone, the screen lighting up like a spark in the dark. It wasn't from Elena. My chest tightened anyway. It was from Mom. "Mom, where are you, sweetheart? Elena says you're not at the wedding. Talk to me." I swallowed hard. Then another message popped in. "Mom, I'm worried." My throat closed. Mom never interfered unless it was serious. She'd spent her life walking the delicate line between her two daughters. One fragile in ways she hid, one fragile in ways she couldn't. I pulled over on the side of an empty stretch of road, letting semi-trucks roar past me like angry giants. I typed a reply. "Me? I'm okay. Just needed space." She replied immediately. "Mom, please come home after the wedding chaos dies down. We'll talk. I love you." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid that if I opened that door even a little, everything inside me would spill out. By sunset, I'd reached a small town near the Wyoming border. I checked into another cheap motel, this one with buzzing lights and a broken soda machine. I stood outside for a long time, watching the sky bleed from orange to purple to a deep, bruised indigo. Somewhere, hundreds of miles away, my sister was dancing at her wedding, laughing, smiling, surrounded by people who fit her perfect world. And I was here on the edge of nowhere, trying to figure out what part of me she found so incompatible with her future. At 9:30 p.m., my phone buzzed again. I froze. This time, it was Elena. My chest tightened painfully. I stared at the notification without tapping it. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the motel's tiny convenience room, bought a warm bottle of water, and sat at a plastic table under a buzzing fluorescent light. Finally, after several minutes of wrestling with my own fear, I opened her message. "Elena, I wish you were here. Today didn't feel right without you." My breath stilled. I read the message again, and again. Then another one came. "Elena, I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. The words should have healed me. Instead, they hurt worse. Because they came too late. Because she didn't stop me from leaving. Because she didn't chase me. Because I'd waited my whole life to feel chosen by her. And today of all days, she hadn't chosen me. I typed back, "Me, I need time." "It was the truth," she replied. "Elena, I understand. But did she? Did she really? Because understanding would have meant protecting me. It would have meant defending me instead of hiding me." I turned off my phone again, and this time, the silence felt final. I spent the next day exploring the small Wyoming town on foot, wandering past antique stores, dusty bookstores, and old-fashioned lampposts. There was a stillness to the place, a slow, quiet rhythm that felt comforting in a way I didn't expect. But no matter how far I walked, I couldn't escape the hollow feeling in my chest. Grief. Not for death, but for distance. For the version of my sister I thought I had. That night, I sat on the motel bed scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of Elena and me at the Oregon coast. At our favorite diner. At the park where we used to feed ducks. Her smiling face felt like a stranger's. I clicked on a video automatically saved from 2 years ago, a clip of us baking cookies in Mom's kitchen. Flour on our cheeks. Elena laughing so hard she doubled over. Me teasing her for burning the first batch. The sound of her laughter pierced something inside me. I locked my phone, suddenly unable to breathe. 2 days after the wedding, I decided to drive toward Colorado. I didn't know why, maybe because something in me needed mountains, something taller than my grief. The landscape gradually shifted from plains to rolling hills, then to the distant silhouette of towering peaks. Snow still clung to their tops, stark against the pale sky. I felt small, and somehow that helped. As I approached the state line, my phone buzzed again. I hesitated before checking it. This time, it wasn't Elena. It wasn't Mom. It was Daniel. My stomach twisted. We'd never exchanged numbers, but I guessed Elena gave it to him. His message was short. Daniel, Mara, I know things are tense, but Elena is hurting. Please call her. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Because if he was the one reaching out, it meant Elena wasn't, or couldn't, or wouldn't. Whatever the reason, it cut deeply. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because caring felt like weakness now, and I had none left to spare. That night, I reached a small town near Fort Collins and found a local bar with a neon sign that glowed across the parking lot. I sat at the counter, ordered a soda, and tried to blend into the background. "You're not from around here," the bartender said. "No," I replied. "Passing through?" "Something like that." He nodded as if he'd heard that line from countless drifters before me. "Whatever you're running from," he said, sliding the drink toward me. "It'll catch up eventually." I gave a hollow laugh. I know. Because the thing chasing me wasn't a person. It was grief. A grief I hadn't earned yet, but was already drowning in. Later that night, back at the motel, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The air felt heavy, the kind of heaviness that warns you something is about to shatter. I didn't know that life was preparing to break open in front of me. I didn't know that soon, my phone would ring with news that would split the world in two, before and after. I didn't know that the distance between Elena and me, the one I thought was temporary, was about to become something permanent, something irreversible, something final. I only knew that I was still running, and I had no idea what I was running toward, or what I was running from. I woke up on the third morning after the wedding, with the strange sense that the world had tilted slightly overnight, like something was off-kilter but hadn't announced itself yet. The motel room around me was dimly lit by the gray Colorado dawn, and the air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and cheap detergent. For a while, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me, listening to the low hum of distant traffic. It was the kind of morning that made everything feel suspended, like the universe was holding its breath. My phone was still off. I couldn't bring myself to turn it on. Cowardly maybe, but cowardice was easier than confrontation. Eventually, I forced myself to get up, splash water on my face, and leave the motel. I drove toward the foothills, craving some space that wasn't enclosed in cracked walls and buzzing lights. The mountains loomed in the distance, silent and powerful. They were the opposite of my life, solid, unmoving, unapologetically present. I envied them. By noon, I'd found a trail near a small national forest. It wasn't particularly scenic, patches of snow, muddy ground, bare trees, but it was quiet, and I needed quiet. I walked for what felt like hours, the cold air burning my lungs in a way that felt almost purifying. Every now and then, I'd stop and sit on a fallen log, staring at the mountains. I thought about Elena, about her messages, about how I hadn't responded. Was I being cruel? Was I protecting myself? Was there even a difference? I didn't have the answers, but the questions followed me like a shadow. Around 3 p.m., dark clouds began to gather overhead, thick and slow like ink spreading across paper. I turned back toward the parking lot, but halfway down the trail, my foot slipped on a patch of wet leaves and I landed hard on my hands and knees. The sting made me hiss. When I stood up, brushing dirt off my jeans. I felt something in my chest twist sharply, an emotion I'd been trying to outrun. I didn't want to be alone anymore. Not like this. Not out here, physically and emotionally lost. A part of me, the part that still loved Elena more than I loved myself, whispered, "Turn your phone back on. Call her. This has gone too far." So when I finally reached my car, breath heavy and hands scraped, I sat behind the wheel and stared at my dark phone. I hesitated, then pressed the power button. The screen lit up slowly, glowing white before blinking to life. Immediately, the notifications began to flood in vibrations, pulsing like a heartbeat. 1 message from Mom. 2 messages from Daniel. 1 missed call from Mom. 3 missed calls from Elena. 1 voicemail, then nothing, just silence. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't open anything yet, not out of fear of what they might say, but what they might not say. I finally tapped Elena's messages. The most recent one read, "Elena, Mara, please, can we talk? I know I messed up. Before that, Elena, I keep looking at the photos and wishing you were in them. Mom tried to comfort me, but it's not the same." The guilt hit me like a fist. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I opened Mom's message. "Mom, honey, please call me when you see this. It's important." My stomach dropped. Daniel's first message. "Daniel, Elena hasn't been herself since the wedding. Please reach out to her." Second message. "Daniel, I'm worried." A stone settled in my gut. Something was wrong. Really wrong. I opened Mom's missed call log. 5 calls, all within 2 hours. The voicemail icon blinked. My hands trembled as I pressed play. Mom's voice came through, shaky and rushed. "Mara, it's Mom. Please call me as soon as you get this. Something's happened with Elena. It's not..." Static crackled. "Just call me, please." The message ended abruptly. The world around me seemed to narrow into a single point, sharp, suffocating. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Something's happened with Elena. My breath hitched. I hit redial instantly. Mom picked up on the first ring. "Mara," her voice cracked. "Mom, what's happening? What's wrong?" There was a pause, a horrible, heavy pause that made the air feel unbreathable. "It's Elena," Mom said, her voice trembling. "She fainted this morning. She's in the hospital." My grip on the phone tightened. "Fainted? Why? What happened?" "They're running tests," Mom said. "She hit her head when she fell. Daniel took her to the ER. They're trying to figure out what's going on." "What hospital? Street?" "Luke's in Tacoma." "I'm coming," I said without hesitation. "Mara, I'm coming," I repeated. Because nothing in this world, not distance, not pride, not hurt, could keep me away now. I threw the car into gear and sped out of the parking lot so fast gravel flew up behind me. My chest felt like it was caving in. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Elena, hospital, tests, head injury. The words looped in my head like a broken recording. I drove for hours, pushing the speedometer far past its comfort zone. The sky darkened, and rain began to fall, first light, then heavier, turning the road into a slick sheet of danger. But I didn't slow down, not even when thunder rumbled, not even when lightning split the sky. I had to get to her. I had to. Somewhere outside Cheyenne, the storm grew violent. Wind slammed against the car. Rain hammered the windshield so hard the wipers struggled to keep up, but stopping wasn't an option. All I could think about was Elena lying unconscious in a hospital bed while I was out here, miles away, after she'd spent days trying to reach me. I should have called her back. I should have been there. I should have. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked. My thoughts scattered like leaves. I kept driving. Near midnight, I finally crossed into Wyoming and pulled into a gas station to refuel. My hands were numb from gripping the wheel. My heart felt bruised. While the tank filled, I leaned against the cold metal of the car and checked for updates. A new message from Mom. "Mom, they're admitting her overnight. She's stable, but they're concerned about the head injury. Please be careful on the road." Another message from Daniel. "Daniel, she keeps asking for you." My chest tightened painfully. I replied instantly. "Me, I'm driving back now. Tell her I'm coming," he replied within a minute. "Daniel, I will. Just hurry." I got back into the car and took a deep breath before merging onto the highway again. The storm followed me. By 2 a.m., exhaustion made my vision blur. My head throbbed. My hands ached. I forced myself to pull into a rest stop not because I wanted to, but because I knew I was a danger to myself on the road in this condition. The rest stop was nearly empty. Only 2 trucks and an old RV sat under the dim orange glow of the streetlights. Rain drummed on the roof of my car like a desperate heartbeat. I reclined the seat and closed my eyes, letting the storm lull me into a restless half-sleep. I dreamed of Elena, of her laughter, of her crying, of her reaching for me in a white wedding dress that slowly turned red like spilled ink. I woke up gasping. The clock read 3:37 a.m. I wiped sweat from my forehead and started the car again. I couldn't lose her. Not like this. Not after everything left unsaid. The sky began to lighten around 6 a.m. A pale gray dawn pushing back the storm. The rain softened to a drizzle. The world looked washed out and exhausted, much like I felt. I crossed into Washington by late morning. My legs cramped from hours of driving. My throat was raw from anxiety. I didn't stop. Not until I reached the hospital parking lot. I parked crookedly, barely remembering to turn off the engine. My legs felt unsteady as I ran toward the entrance. Automatic doors parted. The smell of antiseptic hit me. The sound of beeping monitors filled the hall. My chest tightened. I approached the front desk. "Elena Cruz," I said breathlessly. "My sister. She was admitted last night." The nurse typed quickly, then pointed. "Room 314, 3rd floor." I didn't thank her. I just ran. Up the stairs, down the hall, past nurses, past doctors, toward the room at the end. Room 314. I stopped at the door, chest heaving, hand trembling on the handle. I pushed it open. Inside, the room was dim. Machines hummed softly, and Elena, my sister, my first friend, my almost stranger, lay on the bed, pale against the white sheets, a bandage wrapped around her head. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand. Mom stood by the window, eyes swollen from crying. They both looked up when I entered. Mom whispered, "Mara." Daniel stood. "Mara. She's awake." My eyes darted to Elena. Her gaze was unfocused, hazy until she saw me, and then her face crumpled. "Mara," she whispered, voice cracking. I stepped forward, tears already burning. "Lena, I'm here." She reached out a weak hand. I took it. And in that moment, despite everything, I felt something fragile knit itself back together. But I didn't know yet that it wouldn't last, that the storm inside her had only begun, that this was just the warning tremor before the devastating break. For now, all I knew was this: my sister was alive. She needed me, and I had finally come home. The moment I walked into that hospital room, something shifted inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was guilt, maybe it was love that had always been there, waiting under the resentment. Elena's hand trembled in mine. Her skin felt cold, too cold. Her eyes were glassy but full of desperate relief. "Mara," she whispered again, as if saying my name proved I was real. I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm here, Lena. I'm here now." Mom wiped her tears with a tissue, looking both exhausted and relieved. Daniel stepped aside to give me space, his expression soft, but troubled. I couldn't stop staring at the bandage around Elena's head just above her right temple. It made my stomach twist into knots. "What happened?" I asked, my voice small. Mom answered with a trembling sigh. "She collapsed in the kitchen yesterday morning, hit her head on the counter." Daniel added quietly, "She was making coffee." I heard the mug shatter. My chest tightened. I imagined it Elena standing there in her perfect kitchen, the morning sun glowing through the windows, and then falling, alone, hurting, scared. 1,000 regrets stabbed through me all at once. Elena blinked slowly, as if the effort exhausted her. "I woke up on the floor," she whispered. "I don't remember falling." "Do you feel dizzy now?" I asked. She shook her head slightly. "Just tired." But there was something else in her eyes, a shadow she was trying to hide, a flicker of fear she didn't want anyone to see. A nurse stepped in with a clipboard. "Good, you're awake," she said gently. Then she looked at me. "You must be the younger sister." I nodded. "She's stable," the nurse continued. "But we're waiting on the neurological tests to come back. The doctor will talk to you soon." Neurological. The word hung in the air like a threat. I glanced at Elena, but she looked away. The nurse checked the IV line. adjusted a monitor, then left the room quietly. Silence settled over us, the kind that felt heavy, like it could crush something fragile. Finally, I whispered, "Lena, why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well?" Her eyes glistened. "I didn't know what was wrong," she said softly. "I thought it was stress. The wedding. Everything. Everything meant me. It always had." I exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry," I said, "for leaving, for not answering, for everything." Elena shook her head weakly. "No, I'm sorry. I should have never asked you to stay out of the photos. It was stupid. I hurt you. I thought it was the only way to make everyone happy." A tear slid down her cheek. "Kien moi người vui," she whispered in reflexive Vietnamese words our mother used when scolding us as kids. "Make everyone happy." I felt my throat close. "We should have talked," I whispered. She nodded, eyes full of regret. "I didn't want to lose you." And just like that, the dam inside me cracked. "You didn't lose me," I said, voice breaking. "I left because I thought you didn't want me anymore." Elena squeezed my hand. "I always want you." For a moment, time softened. The sharp edges between us blurred. The wound, still raw, felt like it might begin to heal. But healing is tricky. Sometimes it's only an illusion right before the break. The doctor came in around noon, a tall woman with calm eyes and a professional tone. She greeted us, flipped through Elena's chart, and then spoke carefully. "Your CT scan shows some swelling, but no internal bleeding. That's good news." Relief washed over me. "But," the word froze me. The doctor continued, "some of your symptoms, memory gaps, dizziness, fainting, are concerning. We'll need to run additional tests. An MRI, possibly a lumbar puncture." Elena's grip on my hand tightened. "What are you looking for?" Daniel asked, voice strained. The doctor glanced at Elena before answering. "We want to rule out neurological conditions, inflammation, infection, or something more chronic." "Chronic." The word felt like a knife sliding under the ribs. "What kind of chronic?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. The doctor hesitated. "Let's take things one step at a time," she said. "For now, Elena needs rest. The MRI will be done this afternoon." Then she left us again. Elena stared at her lap. Mom stared at the floor. Daniel stared at the wall. And I stared at my sister. My beautiful, complicated sister. She looked like she was unraveling in slow motion. That afternoon, while Elena was taken for tests, I stepped outside to get some air. The cold wind slapped my face, making my eyes sting. The sky was overcast, pale and heavy, like a bruise. Daniel walked out moments later, folding his arms against the chill. He stood beside me in silence for a moment before speaking. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "I should have been here sooner," I whispered. He shook his head. "No, this isn't your fault. But it didn't feel that way." He sighed, then stared at the parking lot. "She was crying last night," he said quietly. "Kept saying your name. I think she's been more hurt than she let on." My heart twisted. "I didn't know she fainted," I said. I didn't know anything." He nodded. "She kept trying to call you. Guilt stabbed me again, deeper this time. I thought she didn't want me in her life," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked at me, really looked. "Mara, she loves you. More than anyone. She's just bad at saying it without hurting herself." I swallowed hard. "Do you think she'll be okay?" He didn't answer right away. "I hope so," he said quietly. "But I'm scared. I've never seen her like this." His fear reflected my own. We stood in silence, the wind biting, the hospital looming behind us. Finally, Daniel said, "Let's go inside. She'll be back soon." When Elena returned to the room, she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, breathing shallow, skin pale beneath fluorescent light. They settled her into bed, and she managed a small smile when she saw me. "Still here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Her eyes softened, and she reached for my hand again. For the rest of the afternoon, I sat beside her while she drifted in and out of sleep. Mom dozed in a chair by the window. Daniel made quiet calls, voice low and strained. The room felt suspended. A fragile little world with 4 trembling hearts inside. Every so often, Elena would open her eyes and look at me, as though making sure I hadn't disappeared. And every time, I whispered, "I'm right here." Because I needed her to believe it, because I needed to believe it too. As evening approached, a nurse brought in food trays. Elena barely touched hers. Mom insisted she try a few bites, but Elena shook her head. I'm not hungry. Daniel frowned. You need to eat something. I'm tired, she murmured, closing her eyes again. I watched her chest rise and fall, slow and uneven. Something about it made dread claw at the pit of my stomach. She's not okay, I whispered to Mom. Mom squeezed my shoulder gently. That's why we're here. But her eyes were full of fear. Later that night, Mom convinced Daniel to go home and rest. I'll stay with her, Mom said. You need sleep. He resisted, but eventually agreed. As he left, he paused beside me. Call me if anything changes, he said. I will, I promised. He hesitated, then added, She really is glad you're here. Don't doubt that. His words lingered long after he was gone. Around midnight, Elena stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. Mara? She whispered. I leaned forward immediately. I'm here. She swallowed weakly, lips trembling. Are you mad at me? My heart cracked. No, I whispered. No, Lena, I'm not mad. I was hurt, but not mad. She nodded slightly, as if trying to absorb the words. I thought, she whispered, voice raw, I thought you hated me. Tears blurred my vision. Never, I said. Not for 1 second. Her chin trembled. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said immediately. But a knot of fear tightened inside me, because I didn't know if that was a promise I could keep. She squeezed my hand weakly, eyes drifting closed again. I'm scared, she murmured. I brushed her hair gently. I know, I whispered. Me too. She fell asleep again, her breathing soft and uneven. I stayed awake the entire night watching her, watching the sister I had almost lost emotionally, the sister I might lose physically, and the terrible truth hit me in a quiet, devastating way. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. Something deeper was wrong, something dangerous, something the tests would soon reveal. And whatever it was, we weren't ready for it. Morning came slowly, creeping through the hospital blinds like a hesitant visitor. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above us, as if trying to fill the silence with something other than fear. I had barely slept. Maybe 10 minutes here and there, my head tilted against the wall, my hand never leaving Elena's. When the doctor walked in around 7 a.m., Mom jolted awake in the chair by the window. I straightened instantly, my heart thudding in my chest. Daniel arrived moments later, rushing into the room with messy hair and worried eyes. The doctor, Dr. Patel, held a tablet in her hands in a calmness that made me even more anxious. Good morning, she said gently. We have the MRI results. The room froze. Even the machines seemed to pause their rhythmic beeping. Elena was half awake, her eyes heavy but alert enough to sense the tension. What did you find? Daniel asked, stepping closer. Doctor, Patel took a breath. There is a small lesion on the right temporal lobe, she said quietly. We need further imaging to determine the cause. Lesion. The word slammed into me like a physical blow. I felt my breath catch. Mom covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. Elena blinked slowly, as if the word took longer to reach her. What does that mean? I whispered. Doctor, Patel continued carefully. It could be inflammation. It could be an infection. A pause. Or it could be a tumor. The world tilted. I gripped Elena's hand so tightly I was afraid I might hurt her. She didn't pull away. Daniel's voice cracked as he asked, A tumor? Like cancer? We don't know yet, Dr. Patel said. We need a biopsy or a higher resolution scan. But for now, we're monitoring the swelling, which could be contributing to her symptoms. Elena exhaled shakily, her lips trembling. A tumor, she whispered, barely audible. My heart shattered. I leaned closer, brushing her hair back gently. It's just one possibility, I said, though my voice wavered with fear. We don't know anything for sure yet, Doctor. Patel nodded. Precisely. We're not jumping to conclusions, but it's important to be aware of all possibilities. Mom began to cry quietly. Daniel put an arm around her shoulders. Elena stared at the ceiling, tears slipping down the sides of her face. Why didn't I feel anything sooner? She whispered hoarsely. Why didn't I notice something was wrong? Because you were under stress, Daniel said softly. You thought it was nothing. She shook her head, a small defeated movement. I thought it was just wedding nerves, she said. I thought it was my fault. I thought. Her voice cracked. I squeezed her hand gently. This is not your fault. Not any of it. Her eyes found mine. Guilt, fear, pain. I wanted everything to be perfect, she whispered. But nothing is perfect. Not the wedding, not me, not us. I shook my head quickly, tears burning behind my eyes. Lena, stop. We're here. That's what matters. She didn't answer. She looked far away, as if staring into a world none of us could see. After Dr. Patel left, the room fell into a heavy silence. The air felt thick, suffocating. Daniel sat at the edge of the bed. We're going to figure this out, he whispered, touching Elena's arm gently. Mom dabbed her eyes with tissues. We'll get the best doctors, the best treatment, whatever it takes. Elena nodded faintly, but her expression was hollow. When the others stepped outside to speak with the nurse, I stayed behind. Elena turned her head toward me. Mara, she whispered, are you scared? I sat beside her, forced myself to breathe, then nodded honestly. Yes, I whispered. I'm terrified. A tear slipped down her cheek. Me too. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was fragile, sacred even. Then she said, voice cracking, do you think it's a tumor? I swallowed hard. I don't know, I said softly. But whatever it is, we'll get through it together. She stared at me with a trembling, desperate look. Oh, Mara, she whispered. I don't want to lose you. The words stabbed me. You won't, I whispered fiercely. I promise. But the truth was, promise felt like a dangerous word. Too delicate, too hopeful, too breakable. In the afternoon, they wheeled Elena away for another scan. She looked so small under the blanket, her skin pale against the white sheets. I walked beside her, holding her hand until I reached the double doors where family had to stop. She looked up at me, frightened. You'll be here when I get back? She whispered. My voice broke. Always. I watched as the doors closed between us. The moment she disappeared from view, my legs gave out. I sat down hard in the hallway chair, burying my face in my hands. Mom sat beside me. Honey, I can't lose her, I whispered. I can't. Not like this. Mom wrapped an arm around me. We don't know anything yet, but her voice shook. Daniel paced the hallway, his fingers laced behind his head, his breathing heavy. We were 3 different storms waiting for the same lightning strike. When Elena returned to the room 2 hours later, she was exhausted but awake. Her eyes sought me instantly. Mara, she whispered. I'm here, I said, taking her hand. We sat quietly for a long time. The machines beeped softly. The world outside continued unbothered by our fear. Then, out of nowhere, Elena said, Can I tell you something? Anything. She looked at me with a fragile smile. You know that day I told you not to be in the wedding photos? I stiffened slightly. She continued, voice trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought everything would fall apart if I didn't please everyone. I nodded slowly. I know. No, you don't, she whispered. I wasn't trying to hide you. I was scared. Scared of what? She swallowed hard. Of losing you. My breath caught. What? She squeezed my hand weakly. You've been pulling away for years, she whispered. Every time we fought, you drifted a little further. Every time I criticized something, you shut down. I thought, if you came to the wedding and something went wrong, you'd leave me for good. Tears blurred my vision. Oh, Lena. She shook her head faintly. I tried to make everything perfect because I was afraid the smallest crack would push you away forever. My heart broke. Elena, I left because I thought you didn't want me. She smiled sadly. We've both been so stupid. Yes, I whispered, laughing through tears. We have. She closed her eyes, breathing shakily. I'm tired, Mara. I know. She opened her eyes again, soft and pleading. Stay with me? My throat tightened. Always, I said. I'm not going anywhere. She exhaled softly, a tiny sigh of relief, and drifted into sleep. I didn't let go of her hand. Not for a second. That night, after Daniel and Mom went home to rest, I stayed beside Elena again. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the hallway light spilling under the door. At around midnight, she stirred. Mara? She whispered weakly. I'm here, I said. She turned her head slightly, her eyes foggy with sleep. Do you remember when we were kids? She whispered. And you would sneak into my bed because you were scared of thunderstorms? I smiled through tears. Yes. You always held my hand until the storm passed. I remember. She closed her eyes, her voice barely audible. Hold it now too? My heart cracked open. I intertwined my fingers with hers, holding her gently. I will, I whispered. I'll hold it through every storm. She smiled faintly, drifting into sleep. I watched her breathing uneven, fragile, and felt fear coil deep inside me. A fear I couldn't speak, a fear none of us wanted to admit. This wasn't just a fainting spell. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a simple injury. Something was wrong, deeply, dangerously wrong. And whatever was coming, we weren't ready, but we would face it together. For now, while we still could. The next morning felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself already knew something we didn't. The sky outside the hospital window was pale and washed out, a color that looked like exhaustion. Elena woke slowly, her eyelids heavy, her breathing shallow. I had spent the night half asleep in the chair beside her, her hand in mine. My neck ached, my back throbbed, but I refused to move. When she finally opened her eyes, she whispered, "Morning." I forced a smile. Morning. Her skin looked paler today. Her voice was softer, strained. Before I could say anything else, Dr. Patel knocked on the door and stepped inside. "Good morning, Elena," she said gently. "The results from the advanced imaging are back. I'd like to talk with you and your family. Daniel and Mom weren't here yet. They were still driving from home." I texted them quickly. "Doctor is here. Come now." But Dr. Patel didn't wait. She pulled a small stool closer to the bed and sat down. "Mara can stay?" she asked Elena. Elena nodded weakly. "I want her here." I felt a sharp sting in my chest, a mixture of love and fear. "Doctor," Patel took a breath, folding her hands together. "Elena, the imaging shows that the lesion in your temporal lobe is not inflammation. It is not an infection." Elena's fingers tightened around mine. "It is a tumor." The world went silent. Every sound, the beeping, the hallway noise, even my own heartbeat faded into a distant echo. Elena swallowed painfully. "A tumor?" Dr. Patel nodded. "Yes." My throat closed. Elena's eyes filled with tears, instantly pure, unfiltered fear. "What kind?" I whispered, barely able to speak. Dr. Patel hesitated. Her expression softened. "We are still determining the exact type, but based on the shape and characteristics." She exhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. "It appears to be a glioma." I knew the term, not because I was a doctor, but because life teaches you to fear certain words. Elena looked confused, terrified. "What does that mean?" Dr. Patel's voice was calm but heavy. "It means the tumor grows from the brain's glial cells. Some gliomas are slow-growing, others are more aggressive." I felt Elena shaking. "Is it cancer?" she asked in a voice that didn't sound like her own. "Yes," Dr. Patel said softly. "Gliomas are malignant." A sharp, burning sensation spread through my chest like wildfire. "Cancer. My sister had cancer." Elena's breath hitched. How bad is it?" "Doctor." Patel gently placed a hand on the railing of the bed. "We need a biopsy to determine the grade, but the scans suggest it may be higher grade." "Higher grade," I repeated numbly. The word tasted bitter. "Doctor." Patel looked at Elena with deep compassion. "I'm so sorry." Elena broke. She covered her face with trembling hands, sobbing into her palms. Her shoulders shook violently. The sound ripped through me, tearing me open from the inside. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her gently into me even with the IV attached. "It's okay," I whispered desperately. I'm here, Lena." But nothing felt okay. Because nothing was. Mom and Daniel arrived minutes later. When they walked in and saw Elena sobbing in my arms, they froze. Mom rushed forward. "Elena? Sweetheart? What happened?" "Doctor." Patel stepped aside respectfully as I explained in a voice that didn't feel like my own. "It's a tumor, a glioma." Mom sank into the chair, covering her mouth with both hands. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, tears already streaming down his face. "No," he whispered, shaking his head slowly. "No, no, no." Elena couldn't speak. She just cried, breathless and broken. Mom stroked her hair, whispering over and over, We're here. It's okay. We'll fight this." But the words floated in the air like delicate paper, fragile, powerless. When Dr. Patel left the room, she said softly. I'll give you all some time. Time. The one thing we now feared more than anything. For hours, no one spoke much. We cried. We held her. We tried to breathe through the horror of it all. At one point, when Mom and Daniel stepped into the hallway, Elena leaned toward me, her voice small and shaking. Mara, am I going to die? The question stabbed me deeper than any wound I'd ever felt. I cupped her face with both hands. Don't think like that, I whispered. We don't know anything yet. But you heard her, Elena sobbed. It's cancer, brain cancer. People survive cancer, I said quickly. People beat this. Treatment exists. Surgery exists. We're not giving up. She shook her head, tears spilling again. I just got married, she whispered. I was supposed to have a future. My heart cracked. You still do, I insisted. We're going to fight this. All of us. Together. Her chin trembled. She looked like a child again, lost, terrified, needing someone to anchor her to the world. I held her tightly. I'm not leaving you, I whispered. Not again. Over the next few days, everything changed. Elena didn't go home. She was transferred to the neurology unit for monitoring and further testing. We learned new words none of us ever wanted to know. Contrast enhancement, mass effect, biopsy needle, resection, prognosis. Doctors whispered outside her room in hushed tones. Nurses brought medication at all hours. Daniel researched everything obsessively, praying for optimism in medical journals. Mom cried quietly at night when she thought no one saw. And me? I stayed by Elena's side. Every morning, every night, every moment she opened her eyes and searched for me. She grew weaker, more tired, more scared. One afternoon, as rain tapped softly on the hospital window, she whispered, Mara, I'm sorry about everything. About the photos, about the wedding, about pushing you away. I shook my head fiercely. That doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me, she said. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't want things to fall apart. I swallowed hard. They're not falling apart, I whispered. But they were, and we both knew it. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Don't walk away again, no matter what happens. A tear slipped down my cheek. I won't, I said. I promise. She nodded gently, as if that promise was the only thing keeping her anchored to the world. The biopsy was scheduled 2 days later. It was a small procedure, they said. Quick, routine, safe. But no one in that room believed the word safe. Early that morning, they prepped her for surgery. She looked fragile in the thin hospital gown, her hair tied back, her eyes wide with fear. When the nurses began to wheel her out, she reached for me. Mara. I stepped close and kissed her forehead. I'll be here when you wake up. Promise? Promise. Her hand slipped slowly from mine as the gurney rolled down the hall. I stood there, watching her disappear again. The second door closed, just like before. Just like childhood thunderstorms. Just like the night I left. Just like the days we wasted being hurt. Only this time, the storm wasn't outside. It was inside her, and there was no outrunning it. The wait for the biopsy results was the longest 48 hours of my life. Time stretched and collapsed unpredictably, like it couldn't decide whether it wanted to move forward or trap us in place. The hospital lights blurred into an endless cycle of day and night. Nurses came and went. Machines beeped. Rain tapped the windows. And the dread never left the room. Elena slept through most of those 2 days, drifting in and out of consciousness. Whenever she woke, her first word was always the same, Mara? And every time, I squeezed her hand and whispered, I'm here. Because I meant it. Because I needed to mean it. Mom stayed as much as she could, but she was exhausted emotionally, physically, spiritually. Daniel barely left Elena's side, except when he broke down in the hallway and needed a moment to breathe. Everything felt fragile. Too fragile. On the morning the results came in, the sky outside was unnervingly bright, sunlight glaring off car roofs in the parking lot, reflections like shards of glass. It felt wrong for the world to look so normal when ours was crumbling. Dr. Patel entered the room just after 10 a.m. Her expression told us everything. Mom stood, Daniel stood. I couldn't. I felt rooted to the floor, frozen, my hand still wrapped around Elena's. Elena blinked awake at the sound of the door. Doctor. Dr. Patel took a slow, steady breath. We have the biopsy results. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her. The tumor is a grade 4 glioma, she said softly. Daniel's breath caught. Mom gasped sharply. Elena went completely still. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Grade 4. Glioblastoma. She didn't have to say the word. We all knew it. Elena whispered. That's the worst one, isn't it? Dr. Patel nodded gently. Yes. The room shattered into silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that pressed on my chest until I thought I might break. How long? Daniel asked, voice cracking. Dr. Patel spoke carefully. With treatment, radiation, chemotherapy, surgery if possible, patients often live a year to 18 months. She paused. Her next words were quieter. Sometimes longer, sometimes less. Mom collapsed into the chair, sobbing openly now. Elena stared at her hands, her face blank with shock. No tears, just devastation too deep to express. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, unmanageable. My eyes burned, but no tears came. Not yet, Dr. Patel continued. We'll do everything we can for her comfort and her quality of life. We're here with you. But her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater, far away, unreachable. When she left, the door clicked softly behind her, and the world broke open. For a long time, no one spoke. Elena stared ahead, her expression hollow. Daniel held her shoulders, tears dripping onto the sheets. Mom covered her face with both hands, her body trembling. I sat there, frozen. Then Elena whispered, I'm dying. Her voice was small, fragile, terrified. The words stabbed through me like a blade. Lena, I whispered. She shook her head slowly, tears finally spilling. I'm dying, Mara. I leaned forward, grabbing her hands with both of mine. Not today, I said. Not tomorrow. Not without a fight. She broke into sobs. Raw, desperate sobs that filled the room. Daniel pulled her into his arms. Mom wrapped her arms around them. I sat there, watching my family collapse into grief, and suddenly something inside me snapped. I stood abruptly, dizzy with pain, and stepped out of the room before I suffocated. In the hallway, I gasped for breath. The walls felt too close, the lights too bright, the air too cold. I pressed a hand against my chest. It's not fair, I whispered to no one. It's not fair. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, burying my face in my hands. I cried until I couldn't see, until my throat burned, until grief made my whole body shake. A nurse passing by paused. She knelt beside me gently. Are you okay? She asked. I shook my head violently. My sister, she's dying. The nurse's eyes softened with a pain I recognized, pain from someone who had seen too much loss. I'm so sorry, she said softly. Those simple words undid me all over again. When I finally returned to Elena's room, she was sitting upright, her face streaked with dried tears. Daniel and Mom sat on each side of her, holding her hands. Her eyes lifted the moment I walked in. Mara. I rushed to her bedside and hugged her tightly, almost knocking the IV tube. I'm here, I whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She cried into my shoulder. We're going to fight, I said again. We're going to fight with everything we have. But I'm scared, she whispered, her voice shaking. So am I admitted. But you're not alone. She held on to me like she might fall apart if she let go. And maybe she would. Over the next hours, Elena cycled through shock, anger, despair, numbness. At one point, she whispered to Daniel, I'm so sorry. You didn't sign up for this. Daniel grabbed her face gently, tears streaming. I married you for life, he said. For all of it. I'm not going anywhere. Elena broke again, this time into quiet, trembling sobs. Mom sat beside her, stroking her hair, whispering prayers in Vietnamese old words, familiar words. The ones she used when we were sick as children. Tre a con toi, colen conye. And I sat on the other side, holding her cold hand, wishing I could take her pain and carry it for her. That evening, after an endless day of grief, Elena asked for a moment with me alone. Daniel kissed her forehead before stepping out. Mom rubbed her shoulder gently before leaving the room. When they were gone, Elena looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Mara, can I tell you something? I pulled my chair closer. Anything. She took a shaking breath. When you left, After the wedding, when you didn't show up, I thought I lost you. I felt tears rise again. I should have been there, I whispered. I'm sorry. No, she said gently, cutting me off. Let me say this. I fell silent. She stared down at the blanket. For years I thought you resented me, that you hated being compared to me, that you saw me as perfect and yourself as flawed. My throat tightened. Lena, she shook her head, but I was the one who created that distance. I was so scared of losing you that I pushed you away. I thought if I made everything perfect, if I made myself perfect, you'd stay. She looked up at me, eyes shimmering. And now I'm the one who's leaving. The words broke her. And me. I grabbed her hand firmly. You're not leaving today, I whispered fiercely. And until that day comes, whenever it is, I'm staying right here. Tears spilled down her cheeks again. You promise? She whispered. I promise, I said. I'm not walking away again. She let out a shaky breath, some small piece of her relaxing. We sat in silence after that, holding hands, breathing slowly, existing in a fragile moment that felt like both heartbreak and healing. Before she fell asleep, she whispered, Mara, stay with me tonight, of course. So I lay beside her on the narrow hospital bed, careful of the wires, and wrapped an arm around her shoulders like I used to when we were kids hiding under blankets during storms. Her breathing softened, her eyes closed, and before she drifted into sleep, she whispered the last words of the night. I'm glad you're here. I kissed her forehead gently. Me too, I murmured. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passed. People lived normal lives. The sun set. The moon rose. But in that room, we were suspended between hope and heartbreak, between fear and love, between time and the impossible truth waiting just ahead. Because now, we knew the shape of the storm, and it was bigger than anything we had ever faced. The first round of treatments began 4 days after the biopsy confirmed what we all feared. I watched as Elena was wheeled into the oncology wing, her hospital gown fluttering slightly with the movement of the gurney. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered in long, steady lines, each one marking a step into a fight we weren't ready for. She tried to smile at me before she disappeared behind the heavy double doors. It'll be okay, she whispered. But her eyes, those warm, bright eyes I'd known all my life, told another story. They were full of fear. Radiation came first. Daily treatments. 5 days a week. I sat in the waiting room during every single session, listening to the hum of the machine behind the walls, my hands twisting in my lap. Mom brought rosary beads and whispered prayers. Daniel paced the hallway until the nurses told him he needed to sit. Every time Elena emerged afterward, she looked a little more fragile. The first few days weren't too bad, just fatigue, the doctors said. Normal. But on day 6, she vomited in the hallway. On day 7, she couldn't stand on her own. On day 8, clumps of her dark hair began falling onto the pillow. When she ran her fingers through her hair and saw the strands stuck between them, she froze. Mara. Her voice cracked. I rushed to her side. It's just hair, I said softly. It'll grow back. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. It's not just hair. It's proof. Proof that this is real. I cupped her face in my hands. I know. But we're doing this together. She cried in my arms that night, silent, exhausted sobs that shook her thin shoulders. I didn't dare cry with her. Not then. She needed me steady. I saved my breakdowns for the hospital bathroom stalls ugly, shaking sobs into paper towels that dissolved in my hands. When chemotherapy began, the decline was even more brutal. She couldn't keep food down. Her skin turned grayish, her cheeks sunken. Dark circles appeared under her eyes like bruises, and her energy, always so vibrant, even during college all-nighters and work stress, faded until she could barely walk from the bed to the bathroom. One afternoon, after a particularly harsh treatment, she lay curled on her side, shivering despite the warm blankets. I sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed her back gently. It feels like fire, she whispered. I know, I murmured. I'm here. She groaned softly, her breath shallow. I don't want to do this anymore, she whispered suddenly, voice thin and trembling. My heart seized. Lena. I'm so tired, Mara. I feel like I'm disappearing. I swallowed hard. You're not disappearing, I said, though my voice cracked at the edges. You're fighting, and you're not alone. She reached for my hand with trembling fingers. Promise you won't leave me, she whispered. I won't, I said. Not ever. She nodded weakly, her eyes fluttering closed. Mom watched from the chair in the corner, tears slipping silently down her face. She didn't say anything she didn't have to. Her grief filled the room like a second presence. Daniel sat beside her, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. We were all drowning, but Elena was drowning fastest. One evening, after a long day of treatment, I found her sitting up in bed, staring out the window at the setting sun. Her shoulders looked impossibly small in the hospital gown, her collarbones sharp beneath her skin. "Hey," I said softly. She didn't look at me. Her voice was faint. "Do you remember when we used to ride our bikes down that huge hill near our apartment?" I smiled sadly. "Yeah. You always went first because I was afraid." "You were terrified," she said, a weak laugh slipping out. "I was," I admitted. "I made you promise not to go too fast." She finally turned to me, her eyes watery. "But I always did," she whispered. "Yeah," I said softly. "You always did." She lowered her gaze. "And you chased after me anyway." I reached for her hand. "Always." A tear slid down her cheek. "Can you chase me again, Mara?" she whispered. "This time, I don't think I can pedal." My throat tightened painfully. "I'm right behind you," I said, my voice raw. "I'm not letting you ride this alone." She leaned her head on my shoulder, fragile as paper. We stayed like that until the sun disappeared completely. As the days went on, her decline became impossible to ignore. Her memory began slipping. Sometimes she forgot what day it was. Sometimes she forgot she had already asked a question. Sometimes she forgot she had eaten a meal just an hour earlier. And once she forgot my name. It was only for a moment, 3 seconds. Maybe less, but it felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. She blinked at me, confused. "Who?" Then realization dawned in her eyes, followed by panic. "Mara?" she gasped. "Oh my God, I didn't..." Her voice broke. I grabbed her hands. "It's okay," I whispered. "It's just the treatment. It's temporary." But inside I crumbled, because I knew the truth. Memory loss was a symptom of the tumor pressing deeper into her brain. It wasn't the treatment. Not really. It was the cancer. One night, around 2 a.m., she woke up crying quiet, trembling sobs into the blanket. I sat up instantly. "Lena, what's wrong?" She shook her head, hands covering her face. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "I'm not ready." I pulled her into my arms. "You're not dying," I said desperately. "Not now, not tonight, not with me here." She clutched my shirt tightly, crying harder. "I'm scared, Mara. I'm so scared." I held her as tightly as I dared, feeling her ribs through the thin gown. "I know," I whispered into her hair. "I'm scared too." And for the first time since her diagnosis, I let myself cry in front of her. Silent tears, hot tears, tears I'd held back for weeks. We cried together until exhaustion pulled her back into sleep. I stayed awake long after, staring at the ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of the inevitable. Love wasn't enough to stop what was coming. As weeks passed, her world shrank to hospital rooms, medication charts, and whispered conversations. But there were still moments, small, fragile miracles that kept us going, like when she laughed softly at a joke Daniel made, like when she asked Mom to braid the few strands of hair she had left, like when she reached for my hand without looking, knowing I was there. These moments were tiny lanterns in the dark, flickering, delicate, desperately needed. But with every passing day, her body weakened, her steps slowed, her voice grew faint. One afternoon she tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Daniel caught her just in time. Her legs shook violently. Her breathing came fast, panicked. "Sit down, honey," Daniel whispered. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I can't walk." The words cracked like breaking glass. Mom burst into tears. Daniel pulled Elena into his arms. I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth, trying not to fall apart. The truth was undeniable. She was slipping. The decline was accelerating, and all the promises in the world couldn't hold her in place. That night, when she finally fell asleep, I sat beside her and traced the back of her hand gently with my thumb. I memorized every curve of her face, every line, every breath, because I could feel it, the beginning of the end. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Sooner than any of us were ready for. I leaned close, and whispered into the darkness, "I'm here, Lena. I'm not going anywhere." But even as I said it, a cold truth lingered in the back of my mind. There are storms you cannot outrun. There are endings you cannot stop. And there are goodbyes that begin long before the final breath. And hers was already beginning. Elena's decline wasn't sudden. It was slow, agonizingly slow, like watching a candle burn itself out one flicker at a time. The treatments continued, but her body grew weaker, thinner, paler. Some days she couldn't lift her head. Some days she didn't eat at all, and some days, the pain in her head was so sharp she cried out in her sleep. The doctor spoke gently, carefully, but the truth hung in every sentence. "We're focusing on comfort now. We want her to feel as pain-free as possible. It's about quality of life at this stage." At this stage, those 3 words haunted me. They meant we were running out of time. One morning, I entered her room to find her sitting upright, staring at the window. Her eyes were distant, as if she were watching something far away. "Hey," I whispered softly. She turned her head slowly. "Mara." I sat beside her. "Are you in pain?" She shook her head. "No, not today." Relief washed through me, small, fleeting, fragile. We sat in silence for a moment. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, falling softly across her face, highlighting the hollows beneath her eyes and the delicate bones beneath her skin. "It's a beautiful day," she said quietly. "It is." She smiled faintly. "Do you remember when we were kids, and we used to climb onto the roof to watch sunsets?" I laughed softly. "Mom always yelled at us. She said we'd break our necks. And you told her she was overreacting." Elena's smile widened just a little. "I felt invincible back then." "You were," I whispered. Her eyes shifted toward me. "Not anymore." I froze, my throat tightening. She reached out, and I took her hand immediately. "I know what's happening to me," she whispered. "You don't have to hide it." My chest ached. "Lena, it's okay," she said gently. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." But I was terrified. Later that afternoon, Daniel arrived with a small bouquet of white tulips, her favorite. Elena smiled when she saw him, her face lighting up in a way that broke my heart. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "So are you," he said, placing them in a vase beside the bed. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her gently, afraid she might break. Mom came later with a bowl of chowga chicken porridge, Elena's comfort food. The moment the smell entered the room, Elena's eyes softened. "Mom," she whispered. Mom fed her slowly, carefully, like she was a child again. Elena ate a few spoonfuls before her stomach turned. "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly. Mom shook her head, tears gathering. "Don't apologize. Just rest, Konyu." And Elena rested. We all rested with her, because soon rest would be all she had left. That evening, when everyone else went home, I stayed behind. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and Elena's shallow breaths. She opened her eyes suddenly. "Mara?" I leaned forward. "I'm here." She studied my face for a long moment. "You look tired." I laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from my eyes. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," she whispered. "You haven't slept in days." "Neither have you," I said. She gave a weak smile. "Touché." A silence settled between us, gentle, heavy, full of years of things we never said. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry I pushed you away for so long." My eyes stung. "You didn't." "I did," she said, voice trembling. "I made myself unreachable. I didn't know how to let you see me, not the real me." I took her hands in mine. "Lena, I've always seen you." Her chin quivered. I was scared of being a disappointment. "A disappointment?" I shook my head, tears falling. "Lena, you're the best part of my life." Her tears mingled with mine. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered. "You're not leaving me," I said, though fear twisted violently in my chest, but she shook her head gently. "Mara, we both know." Silence, crushing, suffocating silence. Then, "Will you do something for me?" she whispered. "Anything." She took a shaky breath. "When things get bad, I don't want to be alone." My heart shattered. "You won't be," I whispered fiercely. "I swear it. I'll be here." Her eyes softened, full of trust, full of love, full of quiet acceptance. She nodded gently. "Thank you." Over the next days, her decline accelerated. She slept more, spoke less, stopped eating entirely. Her words came slowly, slurred sometimes. And one morning, when she tried to reach for her cup of water, her hand trembled violently, missing the cup completely. She stared at her shaking fingers with horror. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, voice cracking. "The tumor is pressing more on your motor function," the nurse explained softly. Elena cried a soft, heartbroken sound. "I can't even hold a cup." I wrapped my arms around her. "It's okay. I'll hold it for you." She buried her face into my shoulder and sobbed quietly. Not the loud sobs from before, but the kind that break you more. The kind that means someone has stopped fighting the truth. One evening, I walked into her room and found her awake but confused. Her eyes drifted around the room like she didn't recognize it. "Lena?" I whispered. She looked at me sideways, her expression hazy. "Do I know you?" The world fell out from under me. "It's me," I choked. "It's Mara." She blinked, struggling to focus. "Mara?" she repeated weakly. "My sister?" I nodded quickly, tears spilling. "Yes, your sister. I'm right here." Recognition flickered slowly across her face. A faint smile appeared. "My sister," she whispered. I wiped her tears with trembling fingers. She leaned into my touch. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "My head gets foggy." "It's okay," I said, voice breaking. "I'm here." She nodded weakly. "That's all I need." As the days continued, she spoke less and less. Her breathing grew shallower, her body weaker, and one night, as I sat beside her, her eyes fluttered open. "Mara," she whispered. "Yes? Will you tell me a story?" I smiled through tears. "What story?" "Any story," she murmured. "I just want to hear your voice." So I told her everything I could remember. The story of the time she taught me to swim, the time we made cookies and burned half the batch, the time we stayed up all night listening to rain, the time she held me when I cried after my first heartbreak, the time she bought me my first sketchbook, the time she told me I was enough. Her breathing slowed as I spoke. Her eyelids drooped. Her hand slipped slightly in mine. "Mara," she whispered softly. "Yes?" Her eyes glassy, fading, locked onto mine. "You're the best sister I could ever ask for." A sob tore from my throat. "And you're the best part of my life," I whispered. "Always." She smiled faintly, pure, tired, beautiful. "Stay with me?" "Always," I said. She exhaled slowly. Her eyes closed. And though she did not die that night, I knew. I knew the moment she drifted into that deep sleep, that we were at the edge now, the very edge. There wouldn't be many more sunrises. There wouldn't be many more stories. There wouldn't be many more days where she remembered my name. We were nearing the end. And the next part would break us all. Elena's final days were quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world knew not to disturb her. The hospital room felt softer somehow, the lights dimmer, the air warmer. Even the machines seemed to beat more gently, as if out of respect. She slept more than she was awake now. Hours at a time, sometimes a full day. When she did wake, it was only for a few minutes, her eyes fluttering open like she was fighting her way through fog. "Mara?" she would whisper. "I'm here," I always replied. And she would relax again, as if that answer alone kept her tethered to the world. The doctors moved her to a hospice room, a quieter wing, with fewer machines, fewer alarms, more curtains, softer lighting, a place meant for comfort, not treatment. I hated the word hospice. I hated what it implied. But I stayed strong for her. Daniel spent every night beside her, holding her hand as she slept. Mom brought flowers, blankets, whispered prayers, and I stayed by her side constantly, hardly leaving except to wash my face or get water. The nurses knew us by name now. Their eyes softened when they saw us, a silent acknowledgement of what was coming. One morning, I woke in the chair beside Elena's bed to find her staring at me quietly. Her eyes, though duller, dimmer, were still the same shape, the same brown, the same warmth I had grown up with. "Hey," I whispered, leaning forward. "You're awake." She smiled faintly, a fragile smile. "You were talking in your sleep," she said softly. "Oh God," I groaned. "What did I say?" "You said, 'Don't go.'" I froze. Her eyes softened. "You're allowed to be scared, you know." I swallowed hard. "I know." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I want to go home." The words hit me in the chest. Home? I whispered. She nodded, slow and tired. Not to the house, not to the apartment. I mean, outside, somewhere peaceful. Not here. Not in this bed. Her breathing hitched slightly. I don't want to die in a hospital. My throat closed. I grabbed her hand tightly. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Lena. Where do you want to go? She smiled weakly. The lake, she whispered. The one we used to visit as kids. I felt tears rise. Lake Crescent? She nodded slowly. It was always my favorite place. I glanced at Mom and Daniel, who were standing quietly near the window. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Daniel exhaled shakily and nodded. We'll take her, he said. Let's go tomorrow. We left at dawn the next day. A nurse helped us prepare. Elena wrapped her in warm blankets, disconnected all but the necessary equipment, gave us medication to keep her comfortable. The drive to Lake Crescent took hours. Elena slept most of the way, her head resting on my shoulder. I watched her chest rise and fall, each breath more precious than gold. When we reached the lake, the world felt unbelievably still. The water was calm, like glass. The trees whispered softly in the wind. The mountains reflected perfectly in the water. It was exactly as we remembered it. Daniel carried her out gently, holding her like something sacred. We found a quiet spot near the water's edge where the sunlight fell gently across her face. She opened her eyes. Oh, she whispered. It's beautiful. Mom sat on one side of her, Daniel on the other. I knelt in front of her, holding her hands. Thank you, she whispered, for bringing me. Of course, I said softly. Anything for you. Her breathing was shallow, slow. She looked at the water for a long moment. Mara? Yes? I whispered. Tell me. One more story. My throat tightened. Which story? Any, she murmured. Just your voice. I swallowed back tears. Okay, I said. I took a shaky breath. Do you remember the time we camped here? And you told me the water was magic? She smiled faintly. You made me believe it. I continued. You said if we whispered our wishes into the lake, it would keep them safe. Elena's lips trembled. I remember. You told me your wish, I said, my voice shaking. You said you wanted us to stay close forever. Her eyes filled with tears. That was my wish too, I whispered. A tear slid down her cheek. She squeezed my hand weakly. You're still my wish, she whispered. My breath broke. And you're mine. She exhaled softly. The wind rustled the leaves behind us. The lake shimmered. The world felt unbearably gentle, as if everything around us knew what was coming. Elena looked at each of us. Mom, Daniel, then me. I love you, she whispered. We said it back through tears. She looked at me last, the longest, as if she wanted to memorize my face. Mara, she breathed. Stay with me? I cupped her face gently. I'm right here, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Her eyes fluttered, closed, opened halfway again. I'm tired, she murmured. It's okay, I whispered, stroking her hair. You can rest. She took a slow breath in, held it, let it out. Then another, slow, fragile. Mara, she whispered one last time. Yes? My voice cracked. I'm not scared anymore. A tear slipped down my cheek. I'm right here, I whispered. I love you. I love you. She breathed. Her eyes drifted closed. Her hand loosened in mine. Her chest rose, fell, then stopped. Just like that. The world held its breath. And so did we. Mom collapsed into sobs. Daniel pressed his forehead against her hand, shaking uncontrollably. I leaned over her, holding her face gently, whispering, It's okay. It's okay. I'm here. You can rest. But the truth hit me like a wave breaking against rocks. She was gone. My sister, my best friend, my other half, gone. The lake was still. The wind quiet. The world heartbreakingly peaceful. She had chosen her place, her moment, her last breath. And I had kept my promise. I stayed. I held her until the very end. We sat there for hours. No one spoke. No one moved. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky orange, then pink, then purple. It felt like the world was mourning with us. Eventually, Mom whispered a prayer over her. Daniel kissed her forehead one last time. I brushed her hair away from her face and whispered, "You kept your promise too. You didn't leave me." Not really. Because she was everywhere now, in the water, the wind, the sky. The memories stitched into me so tightly I could never tear them out. The weeks after were a blur. The funeral was beautiful. Flowers, soft music, photos of her smiling, people crying, people hugging, people telling stories about her kindness, her intelligence, her laughter. But all I could think about was the lake, her last breath, her last smile, her last "I love you," and the silence that followed. Time passed, slowly, painfully, but grief, even the deepest kind, begins to soften around the edges over time. Months later, I returned to Lake Crescent alone. The water was calm again, reflecting the world like a mirror. I stood at the shore, holding the small wooden box with her ashes. My hands trembled. "I miss you," I whispered into the wind. I opened the box gently and let her ashes scatter across the water. They danced on the surface like silver dust, then slowly sank, returning to the place she loved, the place she chose, the place she died. I closed my eyes. "Your wish came true," I whispered. We stayed close, even at the end. A tear slipped down my cheek. "And I'll carry you with me for the rest of my life." The wind blew softly through the trees, almost like a whisper, almost like her voice. As I turned to leave, I looked back one last time at the water. For a split second, just long enough to break me open and heal me at the same time. I could have sworn I saw her. Standing on the surface of the lake, hair blowing gently, smiling that soft, familiar smile, and then she was gone. But the warmth stayed, and the love stayed. And the space between sisters, once filled with pain, then fear, then grief, was now filled with something quieter, softer, almost peaceful. And I knew, in that moment, she hadn't really left me, not forever, not where it mattered.